Hello, I'm very happy to have you. My warm, cozy blanket channel will envelope you in a fantastic slumber of what was and what wasn't. Like this video and subscribe to the channel if you like what I do. Thank you. Now make yourself comfortable and I'll start telling the story. Divine deception. The terrifying truth behind her faith. Divine deception. Part I, the encounter. In the heart of Nebraska's endless cornfields, where the horizon stretched like an eternal promise and church steeples punctuated the landscape like exclamation points, lived Margaret Hensley. At 42, she had spent her life in devout service to her faith, finding solace in the familiar rhythm of small-town life in Grand Island. Her days began with prayer at dawn, followed by work at the local library, where she maintained order among the books with the same care she applied to her spiritual life. Margaret's faith wasn't merely a Sunday morning obligation. It was the very fabric of her existence. She attended services faithfully, participated in Bible study groups, and volunteered at the church's food pantry. Her home reflected her devotion. Every room adorned with religious symbols, from the delicate cross necklace she never removed to the intricate stained glass window depicting the Virgin Mary that dominated her living room. The encounter occurred on a Tuesday evening in late August, during what should have been her routine walk home from the library. As she passed the old water tower on the edge of town, a sudden warmth enveloped her, unlike anything she'd ever experienced. It wasn't the oppressive heat of summer or the comforting embrace of sunlight, but something entirely otherworldly. The air shimmered as if reality itself had become liquid, and before her stood a figure of indescribable radiance. At first, Margaret thought she was hallucinating, perhaps suffering from heat stroke, despite the cooling evening air. But the presence felt undeniably real. The being before her seemed to glow with an inner light, its form shifting between human-like and something more ethereal. Words formed in her mind without being spoken. Margaret, chosen one, your faith has brought you to this moment. Her knees buckled, and she found herself prostrate on the ground, tears streaming down her face. The voice continued, speaking directly to her soul rather than her ears. It told her of divine plans, of her special role in God's grand design. For hours, or perhaps mere minutes, time seemed to lose all meaning. She communed with this celestial visitor, feeling both insignificant and infinitely important all at once. When she finally returned home, her body moved as if through molasses, each step heavy with the weight of what she'd experienced. The house felt different, smaller somehow, unable to contain the enormity of what had transpired. She fell to her knees beside her bed, praying for guidance and understanding, her mind racing with questions about why she had been chosen and what this meant for her future. Part II, Unraveling Reality. The weeks following the encounter transformed Margaret's life into a surreal tapestry of divine signs and earthly confusion. Each morning, she would wake to find new symbols etched into her windows, perfect geometric patterns that vanished upon touch, yet left behind an unmistakable chill. Her reflection in the mirror sometimes showed faint glowing halos around her head, visible only in peripheral vision. Most disturbing were the whispers that accompanied her daily routines. Soft voices reciting scripture in ancient tongues she couldn't possibly understand, yet somehow comprehended. These phenomena drew attention from others. First came the local pastor, Reverend Thomas, who listened intently to her account, but maintained cautious skepticism. Then appeared Dr. Evelyn Carter, a psychologist from Omaha who specialized in religious experiences, introducing herself with practiced concern. Their visits became increasingly frequent, their questions more probing. Was Margaret eating regularly? Had she been experiencing any stress at work? Did she remember any childhood trauma that might explain these visions? The psychological toll mounted steadily. Margaret found herself caught between unwavering conviction and creeping doubt. During sermons, she would catch members of the congregation exchanging knowing glances when she spoke of her experiences. Her colleagues at the library began treating her differently, their smiles too bright, their conversations laced with forced enthusiasm. Even her closest friend, Sarah, started making excuses to shorten their coffee meetings. Sleep became elusive. When exhaustion finally claimed her, dreams of infinite libraries filled with unreadable books haunted her nights. In these dreams, shadowy figures rearranged the shelves while whispering her name. She began cataloging everything, every vision, every strange occurrence, every interaction, filling notebooks with meticulous detail. The writing became her anchor, proof that she wasn't losing her mind. Yet doubts seeped through the cracks in her faith. Why had no one else witnessed the divine presence? Why did the manifestations occur only when she was alone? These questions gnawed at her during quiet moments, especially during her nightly prayers, when the silence pressed heavily against her ears. She found herself checking and rechecking her journal entries, searching for inconsistencies, wondering if her memories could be trusted. The breaking point came during a particularly vivid manifestation. While preparing dinner, the kitchen lights flickered in complex patterns, spelling out words in Morse code she shouldn't have known how to interpret. As she translated the message, "You are not ready," her phone rang. It was Dr. Carter again, suggesting immediate hospitalization for observation. Through trembling hands, Margaret realized she was teetering on the edge of either profound revelation or complete mental breakdown. Part III, the hidden mechanism. The truth unraveled on a rainy October afternoon, triggered by an innocuous detail that wouldn't leave Margaret's mind. While reviewing her meticulously kept journals, she noticed a pattern in the dates of her supernatural encounters. They aligned perfectly with bi-weekly visits from Dr. Carter and Reverend Thomas. The realization hit her like a thunderclap. Someone had been manipulating her reality. Her investigation began with innocent curiosity, but quickly escalated into obsessive determination. She installed hidden cameras throughout her home, recording every corner with clinical precision. The footage revealed shocking truths. Dr. Dr. Carter's team using advanced holographic projectors to create apparitions, sound engineers manipulating audio frequencies to produce the unearthly whispers, and chemical sprays creating the mysterious symbols on her windows. The most devastating discovery came when she accessed security footage from the library where she worked. There, captured in grainy detail, was her own past playing out like a carefully choreographed performance. Every significant event in her life, from her parents' apparent conversion to their strict religious practices when she was 6, to her strategic placement in Grand Island 15 years ago, had been orchestrated. The library director, her supposed mentor, was actually a behavioral psychologist specializing in long-term social conditioning. Through painstaking research and digital sleuthing, Margaret uncovered the experiment's scope. A consortium of tech companies, government agencies, and academic institutions had selected her as part of a massive study on religious experience and human suggestibility. They had been monitoring her since childhood, shaping her environment, influencing her choices, even engineering her friendships and career path, all to create the perfect subject for their divine deception. The technology behind the manifestations proved equally sophisticated. Quantum projection systems capable of bending light around objects created the apparitions. Advanced AI algorithms analyzed her emotional responses in real time, adjusting the intensity and nature of the phenomena to maximize psychological impact. Even her physical symptoms, the chills, the altered perceptions, stemmed from precisely calibrated electromagnetic fields generated by devices hidden throughout her home. What struck Margaret most profoundly was the sheer scale of resources dedicated to her manipulation. The experiment employed over 200 specialists across multiple disciplines, from neuroscientists studying her brain activity to sociologists documenting her interactions with the community. They had turned her entire life into a controlled environment, a living laboratory where every variable was accounted for and manipulated. As she pieced together the evidence, Margaret realized the true horror lay not in the technology itself, but in its effectiveness. Her faith, her identity, her very sense of reality had all been manufactured products of careful scientific design. The divine presence she had worshipped was nothing more than an elaborate hologram, and her spiritual awakening had been scripted by a team of psychologists working from a detailed protocol. Part IV, Shattered Foundations. The revelation shattered Margaret's psyche like a dropped crystal vase, scattering fragments of her identity across the floor of her consciousness. Initially, denial gripped her with desperate strength. She spent 3 days barricaded in her bedroom, replaying the recorded evidence while simultaneously rejecting its validity. The cognitive dissonance manifested physically. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, her appetite vanished, and sleep became an enemy she battled with prescription medication. When denial gave way to acceptance, anger surged in its place, burning through her like wildfire. She raged against the conspiracy, smashing mirrors and tearing down religious icons that now represented her betrayal. Yet beneath the fury lay a deeper, more insidious emotion: shame. The realization that her entire life had been a carefully constructed lie, stripped away not just her faith, but her sense of agency. Every decision she thought she had made freely, every belief she held sacred, had been guided by invisible puppet masters. Her psychological state deteriorated rapidly. Simple tasks became monumental challenges as she questioned the authenticity of every sensation, every thought. Was the warmth of her morning coffee genuine, or another manufactured stimulus? Did her emotions stem from natural causes, or were they chemically induced? This constant second-guessing led to severe anxiety attacks, during which she would sit paralyzed, unable to trust even her basic sensory input. The community's reaction compounded her distress. News of her investigation had leaked, painting her as either a victim of mental illness or a conspiratorial crackpot. Former friends crossed the street to avoid her, while others whispered about her breakdown in hushed tones. The church board quietly requested her resignation from volunteer positions, citing concerns about her emotional stability. Even Reverend Thomas, once her spiritual confidant, avoided direct eye contact during chance encounters. Most devastating was the loss of purpose. Without her faith, Margaret felt adrift in an existential void. The structure that had defined her existence crumbled, leaving behind a yawning emptiness where her identity used to reside. She found herself staring at walls for hours, unable to muster interest in activities that once brought joy. Books gathered dust on her shelves, meals went unprepared, and days blurred together in a haze of despair. Professional help offered little comfort. Therapists struggled to address her unique situation. How does one rebuild after discovering their entire life was a scientifically engineered construct? Antidepressants numbed her emotions, but failed to resolve the fundamental crisis of identity. She oscillated between periods of catatonic withdrawal and manic attempts to reclaim control over her life, neither state providing lasting relief. The psychological toll manifested in increasingly erratic behavior. She began conducting her own experiments, exposing her manipulators' methods through public demonstrations. Setting up elaborate detection equipment in her home, she broadcast live streams showing the momentary glitches in the holographic projections. These actions, while vindicating her sanity to some extent, further isolated her from the community and deepened her obsession with uncovering every aspect of the conspiracy. Part V. The ultimate revelation. Just as Margaret believed she had uncovered the full extent of her manipulation, a final twist shattered her understanding once more. While analyzing encrypted files from the experiment's servers, she discovered her connection to Project Genesis ran far deeper than mere selection as a test subject. Genetic records revealed she was the biological daughter of Dr. Evelyn Carter, conceived specifically for this experiment through advanced genetic engineering. The documents detailed how Carter and her team had identified key genetic markers associated with heightened suggestibility and religious fervor. Using CRISPR technology, they had enhanced these traits in Margaret's embryonic DNA, creating what they termed a perfect vessel for their divine deception. Her adoption by the Hensley family hadn't been a coincidence, but a carefully planned arrangement, with her parents serving as trained operatives in the experiment. This revelation triggered a cascade of additional discoveries. Margaret learned that her supposed free will had been compromised from conception through sophisticated neural programming techniques. During her early childhood, subliminal messages embedded in religious music and visual stimuli had primed her brain to accept supernatural explanations for unusual phenomena. The timing of her spiritual awakening at age 12 coincided precisely with the activation of pre-programmed neural pathways designed to enhance religious experience. The most chilling aspect emerged from the project's ultimate objective: to develop a method for mass psychological manipulation under the guise of divine intervention. Margaret represented generation, one of a planned series of subjects, each iteration refining the techniques for broader application. The consortium's end goal extended beyond scientific curiosity. They sought to create a controllable population through manufactured religious experiences. As she processed this information, Margaret confronted Dr. Carter in person, demanding answers. The meeting took place in an abandoned church on the outskirts of Grand Island, chosen for its symbolic significance. Carter's confession confirmed Margaret's worst fears. The experiment had succeeded beyond expectations. Her responses to the divine manifestations had provided the data necessary to scale the technology for global deployment. The final twist came when Carter revealed that Margaret's resistance to the program had become the most valuable data of all. Her ability to break free from the conditioning demonstrated both the system's limitations and potential for refinement. Rather than terminating the experiment, the consortium viewed Margaret's awakening as proof of concept for their ultimate goal: creating individuals who could transition seamlessly between programmed belief systems. Faced with this knowledge, Margaret understood that her struggle transcended personal trauma. She represented the first crack in a system designed to enslave humanity through manufactured faith. The burden of this awareness crystallized her purpose, not to seek revenge or redemption, but to expose the truth and prevent others from suffering similar fates. Part VI, Redemption and Resistance. Margaret's transformation from victim to revolutionary began in the quiet sanctuary of her rebuilt life. She established a secure network of former experimental subjects, identified through painstaking analysis of the consortium's data. These individuals, scattered across the country, shared her experience of manufactured divinity and bore similar psychological scars. Together, they formed a clandestine organization dedicated to dismantling the system that had controlled them. The first step involved developing counter-technology to detect disrupt the consortium's influence mechanisms. Drawing on her intimate knowledge of their methods, Margaret worked with sympathetic scientists to create portable devices capable of identifying neural manipulation signals. These freedom detectors became crucial tools in their fight, allowing them to map the consortium's operational network and identify vulnerable communities. Her psychological recovery paralleled her activism. Through intensive therapy and support from her newfound community, Margaret began reconstructing her identity outside the framework imposed by the experiment. She discovered joy in activities completely unrelated to her past conditioning, learning to paint abstract art, exploring secular philosophy, and volunteering at animal shelters. These pursuits helped rebuild her sense of self-worth, independent of manufactured purpose. The movement gained momentum when Margaret published her memoirs, revealing the full scope of the conspiracy while maintaining strategic anonymity. The book's success sparked widespread debate about technological ethics and personal autonomy. Support poured in from unexpected quarters. Religious leaders concerned about the corruption of faith, technologists alarmed by misuse of their innovations, and civil libertarians fighting for mental sovereignty. Legal action proved more challenging. The consortium operated through layers of shell companies and government contracts, making direct confrontation difficult. Instead, Margaret focused on grassroots education, teaching people how to recognize subtle forms of psychological manipulation. She developed workshops and online courses explaining the science behind manufactured belief systems, empowering individuals to question seemingly divine experiences. Her relationship with Dr. Carter evolved into a complex dance of opposition and understanding. Regular communications revealed Carter's growing disillusionment with the project's direction, leading to covert cooperation. Carter began feeding Margaret crucial information about upcoming operations, allowing the resistance to intervene before new subjects could be ensnared. The psychological scars remained, manifesting in occasional episodes of derealization and anxiety. However, Margaret learned to channel these experiences into her activism, using her vulnerability to connect with others struggling against similar manipulations. She established support groups for those affected by psychological experimentation, creating safe spaces for healing and empowerment. As the movement grew, Margaret emerged as more than just a survivor. She became a symbol of resistance against technological tyranny. Her story demonstrated that even the most carefully engineered minds could break free, that manufactured purpose could give way to authentic meaning. The consortium's perfect subject had become their greatest threat, proving that true faith lay not in accepting programmed beliefs, but in choosing one's path despite overwhelming odds. Epilogue: Eternal Vigilance. Years later, sitting in her modest apartment overlooking Lincoln's skyline, Margaret reflected on the complex legacy of her experience. The world had changed dramatically since her exposure of Project Genesis. International regulations now governed psychological experimentation, and watchdog organizations monitored emerging technologies for potential abuse. Yet, the battle against manufactured belief systems continued, evolving alongside advancing technology. Margaret's role had shifted from frontline activist to mentor. Younger generations, born into a world aware of psychological manipulation's dangers, looked to her for guidance. She maintained a blog documenting ongoing threats to mental autonomy, from corporate neural marketing to government-sanctioned behavior modification programs. Her warnings about digital divinity, the emergence of AI-driven religious experiences, gained particular traction as virtual reality technology advanced. The psychological wounds healed slowly but surely. Therapy sessions became less frequent, replaced by meaningful connections with her adopted family, a diverse group of former experimental subjects who had found each other through their shared trauma. Together, they celebrated holidays with a mix of traditional and invented rituals, creating a community bound by authentic choice rather than programmed belief. Her relationship with Dr. Carter ended ambiguously. After providing crucial evidence that led to several high-profile prosecutions, Carter disappeared into witness protection. Their final conversation lingered in Margaret's memory, a mixture of regret, understanding, and reluctant respect. Carter's ultimate fate remained unknown, though Margaret occasionally received anonymous packages containing updated information about emerging threats. The resistance movement flourished, branching into various specialized factions. Some focused on technological safeguards, others on public education, and still others on supporting victims of psychological manipulation. Margaret took pride in watching younger activists take the lead, their energy and creativity building upon the foundation she had established. In quiet moments, she allowed herself to consider the philosophical implications of her journey. The line between genuine spiritual experience and manufactured belief had blurred permanently in her mind. Yet she found peace in uncertainty, embracing the complexity of human consciousness rather than seeking absolute answers. Her faith, once shattered, reformed into something more resilient, a belief in humanity's capacity for growth and resistance against control. As she prepared for another day of advocacy work, Margaret smiled at her reflection. The woman looking back bore little resemblance to the frightened librarian who had first encountered the divine deception. Her eyes held wisdom earned through pain. Her posture spoke of hard-won confidence, and her spirit radiated the kind of authenticity that no technology could manufacture. The road ahead remained uncertain, but she walked it with purpose, knowing that vigilance against those who would manipulate minds was a fight that would never truly end.